All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into SpaceX and that Starship test flight, the eighth one they've done. You guys sent in a ton of news reports, want to break down what happened. And, well, we're here for it. So, just to kind of set the stage, SpaceX launched this massive rocket on March 6th from their starbase, down in Texas.
Yeah, and it was a launch that really had everyone watching, like a mix of huge success, but also, unfortunately, a fiery setback.
For sure, for sure. Let's start with that good part though, that super heavy booster. I mean, that first stage, it's gigantic and it landed right back on the launch tower. They call it the chopstick catch. But come on, it's like straight out of a movie.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch,
Yeah.
but it's way more than just a spectacle. This chopstick catch, it could totally change space travel. Rockets for like forever have been disposable. You launch them once, they fall back to Earth. You build a new one, and
Mhm.
it's just so expensive, so much work, logistically a nightmare.
It's like, I don't know, trying to explore the world, but your ships stink after one trip, Not exactly practical.
Exactly. Reusable rockets changes everything.
Yeah.
Could make space travel so much cheaper, way more accessible. It wouldn't just be governments and billionaires doing it anymore.
Right, right. So yeah, that's the big wow moment. But then things kind of went south, didn't they? That Starship upper stage, the part that's supposed to carry, the crew and cargo, didn't really work out this time.
About 9 minutes into the flight, the Starship, well, let's just say it had a rapid, unplanned disassembly. Simpler terms. It exploded.
Yeah, I was reading, it seemed like several of the Starship's those Raptor engines, they just cut out during the ascent. That's got to be bad news.
Oh, it's definitely a concern. Engine reliability for rockets is it's everything. If even one engine goes out, it can be catastrophic, especially with something as ambitious as Starship. It's pretty interesting though, isn't it? This engine issue keeps happening. What are your thoughts on this, following the Starship program so closely? Is it the design, manufacturing problem? Is it something else entirely maybe?
Honestly, it's really hard to say right now, but when those engines keep failing, it makes you wonder, if Starship is actually ready for like deep space missions, those Mars plans and all that.
It's a good point. Something SpaceX will have to figure out for sure before even thinking about sending people to Mars.
Absolutely. So this explosion, I mean, obviously, it caused a lot of disruption back here on Earth.
Yeah, it really did. The debris was a big concern. The FAA had to they had to stop flights going in and out of Florida airports, several of the big ones. Can you imagine? You're on a plane looking out the window and, yeah, well, let's just say it'd be a trip you wouldn't forget.
Ha, talk about a delay. And about the debris, this isn't the first time Starship has left a little something behind in the Caribbean. After that seventh test flight, some of it landed on the Turks and Caicos Islands, even hit a car. Luckily, nobody was hurt.
It's a reminder that space exploration, it has risks, inherent risks. As we're pushing the limits, we got to be responsible. Focus on safety and making sure we're not causing more harm than good.
Couldn't agree more. And the FAA, they're not messing around. Starship is grounded until SpaceX investigates, figures out exactly what went wrong, and proves they can fix it.
Which is, the only way to do it. They need to find out, like, what's causing these engine failures? Is it the design itself?
Yep.
Manufacturing issues, software glitch? Until they know and have a solution, Starship's staying put.
So for now, we wait.
Mhm.
But while SpaceX is working on those engines, I think it's worth, taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture here. We saw that amazing booster landing, but also how tough space travel can be. Where do you think this leaves SpaceX with all their, huge goals and plans?
That's a great question. And to be honest, there's no easy answer. SpaceX, they've shown they're innovative, they're willing to try new things, push the limits. But these recent problems, they show that getting to Mars, it's not easy. It'll take more than just technical skill. It's going to take dedication, solving problems, and learning from the mistakes, really learning from them.
Which brings up a good point, actually. We always hear about the successes, the giant leaps for mankind and all that. But failures, they're just as important, right?
Oh, absolutely. Every failure, every setback, it's a chance to learn, to get better. It forces you to rethink things, improve your designs, push even harder. In a way, failures, they're like stepping stones to bigger successes.
So even though this latest flight, it had its moments, it doesn't mean it's a step back for SpaceX. It's more like a chance to refine things, come back even stronger.
Exactly. We got to remember, Starship's still in its early days. It's a complicated system, really pushing the limits of what we can do. There's going to be bumps along the way. The important thing is how SpaceX responds. Do they adapt, innovate, find solutions? That's what'll decide Starship's fate and their Mars dreams, too.
Well, I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot, from that booster landing to the explosion and what it all means for SpaceX moving forward.
It's interesting, to think about this test flight and all of SpaceX's big plans. Their goal isn't just like reaching space. They want to make it normal, almost like getting on a plane.
That's a big change from how we usually think about space travel, like something exclusive and crazy expensive. What makes them think that's even possible, you know?
It really comes down to reusability. Think about airline tickets today compared to like 100 years ago. Why is flying normal now for so many people? It's because you can use the same plane for lots of flights. That's the logic SpaceX is using for rockets.
Okay, yeah, I get it. But building a reusable rocket, that's got to be way harder than a reusable airplane, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge engineering challenge.
Yeah.
Let's look closer at Starship, the whole system. That super heavy booster, the one that landed so smoothly, it's uh, it's the most powerful rocket ever built, actually. And the upper stage, the Starship part, even though this landing, didn't go so well, it's supposed to be refueled in orbit.
Wait, refueled in orbit, why is that important?
Imagine you're carrying all the fuel for a Mars trip, like a round trip, all the way from Earth. It'd be so inefficient. If you can refuel in orbit, you basically break the journey into like smaller chunks, easier to manage.
So Starship isn't just about like a quick trip to orbit or the moon even. It's about a whole transportation system for deep space.
Yeah.
Kind of like the difference between a short road trip and driving across a whole continent.
Perfect analogy. And that's why that chopstick catch, the booster landing, it's so important.
I gotta admit, when I saw the footage, I was like glued to the screen. How do they even do that?
It's a whole bunch of cutting-edge tech working together. Advanced navigation, super powerful engines that you can like finally control the power, and those grid fins, they help steer the booster back to the landing pad.
Starting to get why this is such a big deal, yeah. But let's be real, these recent Starship tests, they've shown there are still problems, pretty big ones, to solve.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely challenges. Building a fully reusable system like Starship, it's pushing the limits of what we can do engineering-wise. The size of the thing, the heat it goes through during launch and re-entry, how precise the landing has to be, it's all pretty monumental.
We talked about the engines, which seem to be a recurring issue. What other technical things do they need to figure out?
Well, weight is a big one. Every extra bit you add to the rocket needs more fuel to lift it, which means less stuff you can actually carry, the payload. SpaceX, they're always trying to make Starship lighter, but without making it weak, it still has to be tough.
Like building a race car that can also haul a ton of cargo?
Exactly. And then there's the heat, managing that. Think about reentry. Coming back through the atmosphere, thousands of kilometers per hour. They need heat shields, cooling systems to protect the whole thing and anyone inside.
You can't just like blast the AC, can you?
Not quite. And of course, there's the software. This is like super automated, millions of lines of code, controlling the engines, navigation, everything. That software has to be perfect. Basically handle anything that comes up. Super critical.
Wow, it sounds mind-blowingly complex. But even with all these challenges, there's this feeling of optimism around Starship. Why is that, do you think?
It's because SpaceX, they have this history of doing what people thought was impossible. They changed the space industry with Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, both, partly reusable. And with Starship, they're aiming even higher.
Like they're not just trying to climb the mountain, they want to like move the whole mountain.
That's a great way to put it. And that boldness, dreaming big, pushing the limits, it's contagious.
Yeah.
It inspires people, brings in the best talent.
So let's say SpaceX solves these problems, Starship becomes real. What could this do for us, for humanity?
Oh, the possibilities are pretty incredible. For one, it could make space travel way cheaper, opening it up for more science, exploration. Even businesses could get involved more.
We were talking about space tourism earlier. Imagine experiencing that overview effect, seeing Earth from space, realizing how fragile it is, if that wasn't just for, a few lucky people.
Exactly. And beyond tourism, with Starship, we could build things in space. Research stations, maybe even power stations using the sun. We could have factories taking advantage of, like, zero gravity.
We're talking about a whole change in civilization almost, becoming a multi-planetary species,
That's the ultimate goal. Starship could take lots of people, tons of cargo, to other planets. We could have settlements, not just visiting, but actually living there.
It's exciting, but kind of scary too, right?
Absolutely. Makes us ask some big questions,
Yeah.
Where do we fit in the universe? Is it right to explore space? What's the future of humanity itself?
Those are questions we'll have to answer as we go further into space. It's not just about the tech, it's about what it means for us, for humans.
Exactly right. And that's what makes all this so fascinating. It's not just pushing the limits of engineering, it's pushing the limits of what we know about ourselves, where we belong in the universe.
Feels like we've only just started this conversation. Anything else you want to add before we move on to the next part of our deep dive?
Just this. While we're amazed by the technology, let's not forget the people behind it all.
Hmm.
The engineers, the scientists, the technicians, the dreamers. They're the real pioneers, the ones making this happen.
We've talked a lot about SpaceX and what they want to do, but they're not the only ones, looking up at the stars. Feels like that whole space race is back, but this time it's like companies too, not just countries. So what's this new space race about, and where does SpaceX fit in with everyone else?
It's a really interesting time. We've got the big government agencies like NASA with their Artemis program. They want to get back to the moon, stay there this time, build a base and all that. And they're working with other countries too, which makes it even more complicated.
So it's like working together, but also competing, kind of. Everyone wants to be part of this new, space exploration thing. What's motivating everyone, though? Is it like scientific discoveries, national pride, money, or something else entirely, maybe?
It's honestly a bit of everything. For governments, a lot of it is about science, tech, pushing those forward, and yeah, national pride too. Space, it's always been a way for countries to show off what they can do, prove they're, a big player on the world stage.
And what about the private companies? SpaceX, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, all those, what's driving them? Just profits? Or is it something, I don't know, more idealistic?
I don't think it's just money, no. I think there's this real vision, this desire to make things possible that weren't before, make space something more people can be a part of. Sure, businesses need to make money, but these companies, they're also passionate about space, exploring it, what we can do there.
It's kind of like the early days of airplanes, right? Those pioneers, like the Wright brothers, they were driven by the dream of flying, not just like making a buck.
Yeah, great comparison.
Yeah.
And just like back then with flying, there are risks. We saw that with Starship this time.
Right, and that explosion over the Caribbean, it brings up some questions about the rules, the regulations around space travel. If we're going to have more and more launches, who's making sure it's safe? What does the FAA do exactly?
The FAA, they're really important here. They're the ones overseeing all the commercial space launches in the U.S. They have to keep everyone safe, protect national security, but also help the space industry grow in a sustainable way.
So like air traffic control, but for space. Making sure everyone's following the rules, nobody crashes into each other.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And it's getting more and more complicated as things develop in the space industry. They got to balance progress with safety, which isn't always easy.
Sounds like a tough job. And what about, the environment? All these launches, the debris falling in the ocean, even hitting that car. Can we keep doing this long term without messing things up?
Really important question, and more people are asking it. That environmental impact, it's something we got to deal with right from the start. It's not just debris either. It's the potential for pollution in the atmosphere and making sure all this activity in space, that it's actually sustainable.
So are there like solutions people are working on? Can we do this, explore space without harming the planet?
Definitely. Reusable rockets like Starship, that's a big part of it. Fewer launches means less debris, fewer emissions. And scientists are looking at different fuels, more efficient engines, even ways to clean up space junk.
Sounds like there's a lot to do, but also a lot of potential to do things right.
Absolutely. As we enter this new era of space exploration, we have to be responsible. Sustainability and protecting the environment, those have to be priorities.
Well, we've covered so much in this deep dive, from how Starship works to the whole space race and what it means to be responsible out there.
Yeah, we've seen some amazing successes and some tough setbacks too.
Yeah.
And we got a glimpse of what might be possible, as we go further into space.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope everyone listening, what will they remember from this deep dive?
I'd say the most important thing to remember is that space exploration, it's not about getting somewhere, it's about the journey. There will be challenges, there will be setbacks, and yes, amazing triumphs too, but really, it's a journey we're all on together as humans.
That's a great way to put it. And as we keep going on this journey, let's keep our eyes on the stars, our feet on the ground, and our minds open to all the incredible possibilities out there waiting for us.